Before Doug ever stood under those studio lights, he was broke and desperate, scraping for coins just to buy a few minutes on Christian television. He wasn't networking, he wasn't negotiating, he was on his knees, praying someone would hand him the money to exist on screen. Then he discovered a far more efficient strategy. Why write a check for airtime when you can sign a marriage certificate with the woman who owns the network? So that's exactly what he did. He walked away from a 36-year marriage, set his sights on JONI LAMB, a grieving widow sitting on top of a multi-million-dollar media empire, locked it in, and within 3 years, she's gone. And Doug? Doug has the keys. But here's where the story starts to crack. Doug went public with his divorce from WEISS, painted her as the villain, abusive, cold, withholding intimacy, the kind of marriage, he implied, that no man could survive. Except they still show up to work together every single day, counseling other couples at the same practice, under the same roof. Sit with that for a second. You escape a toxic, abusive marriage, and your response is to keep your abuser as a business partner, to sit across from struggling couples and preach healing beside the woman you publicly accused of destroying you? That's not a divorce, that's a rebranding. Because the moment Doug stepped into Daystar through that marriage, Heart-to-Heart Counseling District didn't just grow, it exploded. Their programs got the Daystar Original stamp, primetime placement, the same prestigious real estate as Ministry Now and JONI Table Talk. We're talking millions in free advertising handed to the WEISS family on a silver platter, millions in new clients flooding through their doors, millions in revenue that never would have existed without that ring on his finger. So ask yourself the real question: was this a divorce, or was this a corporate merger disguised as a love story? And now that JONI is dead, 3 years into that marriage, the public isn't mourning quietly. They're demanding answers. They're demanding an autopsy. Because grief doesn't look like this, and coincidences don't stack this neatly. Something is deeply wrong. Let's pull it apart. Before JONI, before Daystar, before any of this, Doug Weiss was running a mid-sized counseling center in Colorado Springs called Heart-to-Heart Counseling Ministries. His niche? Sex addiction and a condition he personally branded called intimacy anorexia, a diagnosis he invented himself, recognized by no medical board, no psychiatric institution, no credentialing body on earth. His own creation, his own intellectual property, his own revenue stream. And he wanted television to sell it to the masses. Because the math is simple. TV exposure multiplies clients. Clients multiply revenue. Revenue multiplies power. But buying airtime on Christian television, that'll cost you tens of thousands of dollars every single month just to keep the slot warm. So Doug says he prayed. He asked God for a financial miracle, and according to him, someone donated just enough to get him through the door. That's where the story begins, but it's not where it ends.
When I was going through the divorce process, I already filed for divorce. Now for 20 plus years. I wanted to do a show on Daystar, okay, and the Lord said, don't you fund it. I'm going to do it. I'm like, okay. So I went on for years. And after I filed, I had a guy give me $400,000. Then about a week and a half later, I had someone give me $250,000 out of the blue. Okay. So I'm like, okay, Lord, so we're working still in the filing process and not knowing what's going to happen. Okay, now that's a miracle. Okay, if you don't get $650,000 out of the air, that's a miracle, right? And you know that. Okay.
But here's the ugly truth about that miracle. It was a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Buying television slots isn't a one-time expense, it's a subscription to survival. You pay per episode, per time slot, per network, per month. The bills don't stop coming just because God sent you a donation. So Doug found himself trapped in a hamster wheel. Chase money, buy airtime, run dry, beg again, repeat. That's not ministry. That's not a business. That's a man drowning in slow motion. And then he spotted the lifeboat. November 30th, 2021, Marcus Lamb is dead. COVID takes him, and with him goes Joni's world. 40-plus years of marriage, her co-founder, her partner in faith, in business, in life, gone. Overnight, JONI LAMB is standing alone at the helm of a multi-million-dollar television empire she has never navigated by herself. She's grieving, she's overwhelmed, she's vulnerable. And Doug WEISS is watching. We don't know the exact moment Doug made his move, but we know the timestamps. February 7th, 2022, barely 3 months after Marcus's body is in the ground, Doug files for divorce with Lisa. By May 2022, it's finalized. By June 2023, Doug WEISS is standing at an altar with JONI LAMB. Marcus to marriage, less than 2 years. Now pause, because this is where Doug's own words indict him. This man built an entire counseling empire around one core teaching. After major loss, death, divorce, trauma, you must wait 2 to 3 years before entering a new relationship. That's not a suggestion from Doug WEISS. That's his professional doctrine, his product, his brand. He married JONI 18 months after Marcus died. 18 months. His own rule, his own violation. Why the rush, Doug? Because this was never about healing a grieving widow. This was about acquiring an asset before someone else did. Now let's talk about Lisa, because this is where the story doesn't just get suspicious, it gets insulting. Doug went on record. He said Lisa was abusive. He said she withheld intimacy for decades. He gave her condition a name, intimacy anorexia, a diagnosis he invented himself, validated by no medical body on earth. He painted their marriage as a prison, a toxic, soul-destroying, unbearable prison. Those are not mild complaints. Those are the words of a man desperate to escape. So why is Lisa WEISS still sitting in the office next to him? Why is the woman he publicly labeled abusive still his business partner, still co-counseling broken marriages at Heart to Heart, still building the ministry they created together? Together. If Doug was telling the truth about Lisa, her presence in that building is incomprehensible. And if Lisa was telling the truth about Doug, her willingness to stay is even more incomprehensible. Two people who allegedly destroyed each other, showing up to work every morning, side by side, counseling other couples on love and intimacy. There is only one explanation that survives logic. This divorce was never real. It was paperwork, a legal maneuver dressed up as liberation. Now let's count what Doug gained. Before JONI, heart-to-heart counseling was regional, a Colorado practice, some books nobody outside the Christian self-help bubble had heard of, speaking gigs, a website, modest, forgettable. After JONI, Heart to Heart became a Daystar original, the same prestige tier as Ministry Now, as JONI Table Talk. Doug's programs began broadcasting to millions of households worldwide. That's not just exposure, that's a marketing budget most ministries could never afford, handed over for free, gift-wrapped inside a marriage certificate. More viewers, more clients, more book sales, more courses, more speaking fees, more revenue. All flowing back to who? The WEISS family. Doug and Lisa, the same two people who were supposedly divorced, the same partnership that supposedly ended. Doug divorced Lisa on paper, but financially, they never separated. So here's the scenario laid bare. Doug dissolves the marriage in a courtroom, keeps the business partnership intact, marries into a television empire, floods Heart to Heart with Daystar exposure, and both he and Lisa profit massively from a woman who believed she married for love. Was this a divorce, or was this a corporate acquisition with a wedding reception? And then, JONI died. June 2023, the wedding. She's radiant, glowing in every photo, energetic on the honeymoon, the picture of a woman beginning again. 2024, health problems emerge, quietly, nothing disclosed publicly. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Susie are fired. Major ministries begin quietly distancing themselves from Daystar. April 2025, Joni misses Paula White's birthday event, a $10,000 gathering, the first crack visible to the public. Early May 2025, Joni vanishes from Daystar programming entirely. Mid-May 2025, Doug surfaces with a statement: 2 hairline fractures, T11 and L1, spine injuries. May 7th, 2026, Joni Lamb is dead. Official explanation: serious health matters compounded by the back injury. 3 years. Wedding to grave. 3 years. And medical professionals who've reviewed the publicly visible symptoms, facial swelling, arm paralysis, a drooping eye, are saying those symptoms do not align with spinal fractures. Those symptoms point somewhere else entirely: stroke, cancer, neurological deterioration, something systemic, something that should have a name. But Daystar won't give it one. So let's run the 2 scenarios, clean and direct. Scenario 1. This was real. Doug suffered for decades in a toxic marriage. He finally broke free, found unexpected love in a grieving widow, built something genuine, and lost her too soon to illness. He still works with Lisa because the ministry is bigger than the marriage. Tragic. Human. Possible. Scenario 2. This was calculated. Doug needed a platform. Lisa needed exposure. Joni needed support. Doug manufactured a divorce to create legal availability, targeted a vulnerable woman at her lowest point, married into her empire, extracted maximum value, and when she died, walked away with everything. The divorce was strategy. The marriage was acquisition. The grief is performance. Now answer this honestly. If Doug genuinely believed Lisa abused him for decades, why is she still there? Why does she stay after he publicly humiliated her? Why does she keep building his brand after he called her toxic? The only answer that doesn't require you to ignore reality: it was never personal. It was always business. And that is precisely why people are demanding an autopsy. Not because death is impossible, not because grief isn't real, but because an autopsy would answer the questions Daystar refuses to answer. The actual cause of death, whether proper medical care was provided, whether anything was missed, withheld, or worse, whether a woman who trusted the wrong person paid for it with her life. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are questions that follow the evidence. So let's land this plane. Doug Weiss spent years begging for a television miracle. Then Marcus Lamb died. Joni was left alone and grieving. Doug divorced his wife, but kept her as his business partner. He married Joni. Heart to Heart exploded onto Daystar. Joni deteriorated within 2 years. Joni died within 3. And now, Doug sits positioned over an empire, while Lisa still runs the ministry they never actually separated from. One question remains standing above all others. Was this love, or was this the longest, most elaborate business deal in Christian television history? Because Doug Weiss got everything he wanted. The platform, the access, the control, the exposure, millions in revenue, an entire network. And all it cost him was 3 years of Joni's life. Drop your answer in the comments. Should there be an autopsy? Was this love or leverage? Share this with someone who needs to see the full picture. And remember this: when someone's actions tell a story their words keep trying to rewrite, read the actions. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.